Hey everybody. Today we're going to be reviewing the SUMIF function. What's the SUMIF function? The SUMIF function in Excel is a powerful tool for adding up values based on specific criteria. It allows you to sum numbers in a range that meet a given condition. Breaking that down into the function and syntax, the SUMIF function consists of a range, the criteria, and the sum range. The sum range is optional, so the two required fields are the range and the criteria. The range is the range of cells you want to evaluate or search for the given criteria. So this is what you're trying to find a match on. The criteria is the condition that determines which cells to sum from the range. So you're going to select a list of numbers from a range, and you're going to give it one criteria to look through those list of numbers and return the sum if the criteria matches an entry from the range. The optional piece here, which I use most of the time, it's not really optional a lot of the time, is the sum range. The sum range piece is you telling Excel that you want to sum over a different range than the range you're evaluating your criteria over. So, for example, you have this product list here, this use case where you have a bunch of products, say we're at a grocery store, and the sales on those products and how many of them were sold and which category they fall into. So what you want to do is you would say, in this case, I want to sum all of the sales for a specific product, apples. The range in this example would be the product. This is what you're searching for, the criteria. And we want the criteria we want is apples, and that apples exist in the product here. So this is our product range. And then the criteria, which is apples. You can also type that in manually. And then the sales, or the sum range we want to return, is the sales, which is different from the product range or the regular range. Press enter, and this is the sum of all of the apples, sales of the apples. And you can see that there. It's 175. If we select both of those, control, hold. Okay, we can change this then. If we want to do it for quantity instead of sales, we could drag this over to quantity, and now we can see the quantity. Get rid of the number sign there. Now you can see the quantity of apples sold, right? 25 plus 15 is 40, right? So that's how SUMIF works on a basic level. Look at it as a very simple example, another one. Okay, so in this example, similarly, you have just products and the sales for those products. What we're going to do is just create a very simple SUMIF function. We're going to sum if it's equal to apples, and we're hard coding apples into there this time. So what we're going to do is equals sum if the range we want to search for our criteria is the products. The criteria we want to find is going to be apples, and the return sum range is going to be the sales. That gives us 175. We can also just change this to bananas, 150. Right? Simple enough. Example 2. So in example 2, we want to find the average sale for the product. So this is combining two functions now, SUMIF and another function that's similar called COUNTIF. SUMIF is summing up all of whichever specific column you specify, whereas COUNTIF is just counting the number of times that specific criteria is met in the range you gave it. So in this case, we're going to do equals SUMIF, the range we want to search for our criteria, the products, the criteria we want to search, which is going to be apples, and then the sum range we want to return, and then we're going to divide this. Okay, so that gives you 175 again, just like the previous example. Then we're going to divide this by a COUNTIF, which is very similar to SUMIF. So COUNTIF, the range is going to be the products again. The criteria we are searching for is apples, and this does not have additional sum range because you're just counting the number of times apples appears. So it's taking essentially the sum of sales of apples divided by the count of apples in the table. We'll give you the average sales for apples, which is 87.50. And we can change this here to bananas, but there's no average here for bananas. It's going to be just 150. Again, you can change this to quantity instead of sales, and that will show you not the sale for the product, but the average quantity sold for the product, which is 30 bananas. All right, this is a more advanced example using SUMIFS multiple function, a function that allows you to do multiple different criterias called SUMIFS. Very similar. The arrangement of the syntax is slightly different, but now that you know how SUMIF works, you'll have no problem using the SUMIFS function. So for this example, we're going to return a SUMIF now if we have a conditional statement. So in this condition, we're looking for sales that are greater than $100 only. So in this case, we're doing SUMIF. We're looking for sales is our range we're searching in, and I did Control-Shift down there to fill in from 6 to 45. The criteria, so whenever you're doing a evaluation criteria, you're going to have to put it into quotes like this. This is how it works for COUNTIF, SUMIF, SUMIFS, COUNTIFs, any function like that. So you put it in quotes like that, and then we're going to do and, so this is kind of a concatenation here. here, and then whatever the criteria is we want to evaluate against. So this is saying when sales is greater than, saying this is kind of the sales here, sales is greater than, and then you're adding the criteria you want to evaluate. A different way you could do this is we could do like this, 100 in the quotes. This would give you the same result, but you wouldn't be able to change the criteria as easily based on a cell. So that's why we're doing it this way. It's a little more dynamic. The sum range is the same as the regular range, so we can just leave that as is. No, don't have to include that. All right, so that's $9,345. So we're looking for anytime there's anything above 100, we can go here and do a number filter greater than 100 and see if we add all of these together. You're at $9,345, just the same as we have here. Let's now do another one where our region is equal to east. So in this example, we're going to do, it's very similar to the previous one we just did, the one on SUMIF example 2. SUMIF, the range is going to be the region, Control Shift down, comma, the criteria, east, or whatever dynamic criteria you enter here for the region. So something over sales. So this one does have a sum range that is different from the regular range. Enter $6,775 is the sum of sales for the east. We can double check this by filtering here. In order to get these filters here quickly, you can select your entire piece of data by selecting the first top left corner, doing Control Shift right, Control Shift down. That'll select everything for you. Then you can do Control Shift L, and that'll add and remove your filters. Now let's see what the east looks like. You sum over the east. That gives us $6,775. That matches there. Control Z to go back on that filter. And then to combine these two things together, so now we want the sum when the sales is greater than 100 and the region is equal to the east. So it's combining these two criteria we just built here into one function now. So we're going to go equals SUMIFS to pull up syntax for it. So we see here, instead of ending with the sum range and it being optional, in SUMIFS, the sum range is mandatory, it's required, and it goes in the front now. So we're going to specify our sum range. In this case, it's going to be sales. So select there, Control Shift down, comma, and then our criteria range. So this is the range of the first criteria. The first criteria we're doing here is going to be when sales is greater than 100. So the criteria range is also sales. Control Shift down, and then the actual criteria is going to be criteria 1 here, which is 100. But it's when we're greater than 100. So we have to do in quotes greater than end quotes. And if we close that out, it'll give us the previous valuation of the SUMIF. So next we're going to add on our second criteria. So our second criteria range is the regions. So we're going to select region, Control Shift down to select all of that. You can also grab the entire column as well. That's another option. Just hit that E column like that. I want to show you guys some keyboard shortcuts doing it this way though. And then the criteria, this is criteria number 2, which is east. And then we're going to go ahead and press enter. And that is now the intersection between when we are in the east and our sales are also greater than 100. A combination of those two things that gives us $6,505, which is exactly what this evaluates out to. $6,505. Now, another way we can use this is in a table that has all the regions shown. So we can see the SUMIF of sales greater than 100 in these specific regions dynamically. So this is a very good use of SUMIFs. And we're going to do SUMIFs. Sum range again, sales. In this case, I'm going to do the other way, SUMIFs. We're just going to tap that D header there. So it's the sales columns in D, comma, criteria range. The first one is also sales, so D again. And then the criteria is when we are greater than and 100. We can change it. We can just select that there. You can also put 100 there either way. And then the second one is going to be the region. So the region criteria, I'm going to select the E column for the criteria range 2. And then that criteria now is going to be the actual columns, the region columns in this table. So I'm going to select the east. What I'm going to do is lock this into the column by pressing F4 on your keyboard 3 times. And that gives you this $sign here in front of the G, which means we're locking it into the G column. You can do the same thing here for this 100. We're going to lock that. We're going to press F4 once, and that's locking it into this cell. So when you drag this formula down, it's not going to move this box away from this position. And if we drag this formula to the right, let's say, it won't move this box out of this column. It'll stay here and just drag it down. We can also, if we were using this previous method we were doing before, we were just referencing the cells, you would also have to do this around these like that. Enter. Okay, and that should be the same as this, and then we can expand this out to both the north, south, and west. And if we were to change this to south to confirm 890 west, yep, so these all match. So that's one way you can use SUMIF, and then also the SUMIFS function. There's many uses for this. It's very versatile in Excel, used very often, especially when you're creating dynamic tables like this one here. You want to pull out certain data filtered in a certain way from the overall data set that you have. If you found this video helpful at all, please go ahead and like it, share it with a friend. If you have any questions, leave a comment. We'll get back to you. As always, this has been Simply Spreadsheets. See you in the next one.